Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We've had a meeting with the three devolved administrations. We set out our conclusions in a communique, which you all should now have. Two particular aspects I want to draw attention to. One is that last year, you may remember, we had subsequent to the United Kingdom general election, we had a meeting in Belfast, where the three administrations welcomed the Respect agenda, which had been outlined and established by the Prime Minister. I mean, today we want to reaffirm that welcome, but also to add that next week in the Joint Ministerial Committee meetings in London, we're going to see the opportunity for the good faith and bona fides of that Respect agenda to be put to the test. There are key financial discussions on issues such as NGR flexibility, on issues such as the position of the devolved administrations and their flexibility in running their own finances, on issues such as the adjudication procedure for disputes between administrations in these islands. All of these will be on that agenda next week, and all three administrations expect to see, in light of the Respect agenda, key issues of progress being made next week. Second point I'd draw attention to is the three bullet points which were the subject of the discussion today on financial reforms, constitutional reforms and policy reforms. We see the devolved government setting out a progress agenda for these islands to our benefit as countries in Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, but also to the benefit of all the peoples of these islands. We've specified the areas where our administrations are in the van of pushing for progress. We adopt an attitude between our administrations of mutual support. We don't all have the same priorities, but we do have a priority for supporting each other in what are legitimate demands from the peoples of Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland. Each of the leaders who appear before you have been in recent election campaigns, very recent election campaigns, and each of the parties which comprise the key elements of government in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have emerged with substantially enlarged mandates. And therefore we go into these discussions both looking for good faith in terms of the Respect agenda, but also in terms of having a mandate from the people who matter, that is the electorates of Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland, in terms of seeing real defined progress across these agenda items. So we had an excellent discussion on these points, as ever with this cast. We came to very substantial agreement, and we believe that by pushing these points in a coordinated, united and helpful fashion, then we can see substantial progress in the discussions next week and beyond that. Carwyn, do you want to add a few points?
Yes, simply to say that what has been done today is to agree a broad thrust for discussions with the UK government. Each administration, of course, will have different views on which powers each administration would want to pursue for their respective nations. But nevertheless, it's important that we build on the Respect agenda that was outlined by the Prime Minister before the devolved elections, and we approach discussions with the UK government in good faith. And we look forward, of course, to the first meeting taking place next week, where a number of issues of mutual interest can be discussed.
Peter, do you want to add a few points?
Well, first of all, can I thank you for your hospitality and for hosting this event today. It has been very useful for us all. I know a lot of people, particularly in the press and media, consider events like these as a ganging up against the coalition government. I think it's massively in the interest of the coalition government that they get a more coordinated and cohesive response to the issues that are being raised at JMC meetings and in other fora, by us meeting and having a collective view where it is possible, recognising that there are distinctions between the powers that we each have and indeed the priorities that we each have as to how we move forward. And I think we do take a collective approach that, not just for this government, because it has been a tendency in Treasury for some considerable time to treat the devolved assemblies and executives and governments as if they were other government departments. We're not. None of the other government departments go out and seek and receive a mandate for what they are doing outside of what the the central government is doing. We have our own mandates, and we should be treated in a different manner, and therefore we need to have much more flexibility than other government departments do in relation to how we deal with our finances. And we have obviously proposals that we will put to the government on how we might move forward. But I believe that today's discussions have been helpful. You have a sense of that from the agenda as to how we will move forward. But we are very much in the mode that we want to work and cooperate with the government and to take forward the agenda that they set, their respect agenda, and make real progress.
Martin.
Yeah, well, I want to join with Peter in thanking you, Alec, for facilitating this important engagement today, and for the hospitality. It was most welcome. Obviously, we've come here to discuss issues that are of mutual importance to all of us. The reality is that we've just been through elections in which all of us have had very strong mandates in terms of support from local people for the work that we're engaged in the devolved institutions. It's no secret that we have been unhappy that the London administration hasn't taken the difficulties and challenges that the devolved institutions have faced, particularly against the backdrop of the world recession and the severe economic challenges that lie ahead. Concern is that not enough was being done or recognised by London to appreciate the challenges that administrations like ours have to face up to. So I would hope that in the coming period, reiterating what Peter has said, that we will continue to work in a positive and constructive way between ourselves, but also to see the administration led by David Cameron and Nick Clegg take much more seriously the issues that we have raised, particularly in relation to fiscal and economic matters. These are difficult times. We are facing, all of us, very difficult challenges. And I think what we need to see is a recognition by the coalition government that they have more to do in terms of assisting devolved administrations to meet the challenges that clearly lie ahead, particularly in relation to economic recovery out of a world recession. So these engagements are very, very important, particularly important for me that the Celtic nations come together, and I stress the word Celtic as opposed to Celtic. And I think that as we continue to develop our own working relationships, there is no doubt whatsoever that the combined efforts and consensus that we reach on quite a number of issues are matters that need to be taken very, very seriously by the Westminster government.
Fine, thanks very much. Now, I know that our friends are on a reasonably tight timescale in terms of catching their planes, but nonetheless, we've got time for a question or two. Please, from the Herald.
Brian Curry, the Herald. Question to Mr. Robinson, please. Mr. Robinson, you look like going to benefit from lower corporation tax. How do you view Mr. Salmon's case for a lower corporation tax for Scotland?
Well, I'm pretty sure, knowing Alec, that Alec can make his own views known as to how beneficial that might be for Scotland. Though I do point out that if we were to succeed in having powers to deal with the issue of corporation tax and to lower it, that it does have an adverse impact on our block grant, and that's based on the present levels of corporation tax. So it's not all a one-way street. We hope to make progress on it. I think we're the only devolved administration where the present government has brought forward a paper where it is presently out for consultation. There is a very strong view in Northern Ireland that this would be beneficial, but it's felt particularly that it is required in Northern Ireland because of our unique circumstances in that we have a neighbour to the south who have a much lower level of corporation tax. And I think that it can't be ignored that we've come out of a very prolonged period of conflict, and that has had an adverse impact on the infrastructure that we have and the catching up that has to be done in terms of job opportunities and growing our economy. So I hope that we succeed in getting those powers. I believe that they will greatly benefit our ability to progress with our main programme for government priority, which is growing our economy.
Interestingly enough, if I could presume to interpret your next question. I was asked that question by the Belfast Telegraph after our meeting last year. I think it was the first question the Belfast Telegraph asked. And when I said I was strongly in favour of the Northern-Irish push on corporation tax, for two reasons. One, I thought it would be good for Northern Ireland, and secondly, because I felt if successful, it would create a very effective precedent. There's no doubt that Northern Ireland, because of the work done by Peter and Martin and others, is in the lead in these matters. There's equally no doubt that it's in the interests of the rest of us to see that Northern Ireland is successful, because we'd hope to be following on behind Northern Ireland and not too much a distance. So that's the progressive attitude that we've taken to these matters. Now we're supporting our mutual ambitions of the respective governments, because we think it will be helpful to us all over the peace and in the fullness of time. Brian.
Brian Taylor, BBC Scotland. The same topic, and perhaps also to Mr. Robinson. Welcome to Scotland. On this issue, you're stressing the unique nature of Northern Ireland's economic dilemma. You're stressing the unique nature of Northern Ireland's claim as a consequence. Is there just something of a danger that if Scotland pushes the case too hard at this stage, while you're still out to consultation, that the Treasury might take fright altogether and turn it down for Northern Ireland as well?
Well, I think the government have brought forward the proposals in their document because they recognised that there were special circumstances in Northern Ireland. Every part of the United Kingdom can look at our experience, and they can determine to what extent they have a case to put forward. It's not for me to tell any other part of the UK what they should do on this issue. I just know that there is overwhelming support within Northern Ireland for this, even though we recognise that we have to deal with the potential reduction in our block grant as a consequence. That block grant reduction for somewhere like Scotland, on the basis of the paper that was put forward to us, would be well in excess of £1 billion, £1 billion and a half pounds of a reduction. So every part of the UK would have to decide whether that was something that they would want to be pushing for in those circumstances.
Well, Peter puts the point very fairly, Brian, but just as the Belfast Telegraph succeeded in eliciting from me enthusiastic support for Northern Ireland last year, I'm content with the view that each administration pushes for its priorities, and I think the success, and I hope it will be success, of Northern Ireland in pushing its claim on corporation tax will open up a very progressive agenda which will have implications elsewhere.
Mark Temple, BBC Northern Ireland, picking up from that, was this meeting to some extent about ensuring that you don't scare the Treasury horses when you go into the Joint Ministerial Committee? And,
no, I mean, the meeting actually was about matters which will be discussed next week, which are about end-year flexibility, about the disputes resolution procedure on the Olympics, about major issues which are before us right now. The fact that the administrations in Wales and Northern Ireland, by virtue of the Treasury's decision-making, lost several hundred millions of pounds of their balances, which have been built up of years of Wales and Northern Ireland's finances, most unjustly, and hopefully we seek to do something about that. And of course to prevent such a thing happening again, because if that happened again, it could happen to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. On the question of the Olympics, by any judgment, there is some £300 million of expenditure which would have been properly barnetable. That is to say that there should have been consequences in terms of £300 million for the nations of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, which has not been forthcoming. We believe that we achieved at previous meetings the concept accepted of an independent look at this question, something which we enthusiastically support because we believe that no independent authority could come to any other possible conclusion, and we expect next week to see that commitment to independent advice on the matter fully respected. There are changes being suggested by the Treasury to the financial provisions which occupy us greatly because, as was rightly said by Peter a few seconds ago, that we are not government departments of Whitehall. We are administrations elected by people on a clear mandate, if I may say so, a very, very clear mandate indeed, to pursue the interests of the people of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
Just if I could say maybe to Mark that as far as the JMC meeting is concerned, I think the key issue for Northern Ireland at that meeting will be in relation to the end-of-year flexibility. We lost, or we had stolen, £315 million that we had in EYF stock. We believe that to be so unfair, and I'm pretty sure Carwin has the same view, because Wales lost an even larger portion than that. That we would intend to put that issue before the disputes resolution procedure of the JMC.
Important to realise that when we talk about end-year flexibility and the money that's been lost to both Wales and Northern Ireland, this is money that was actually voted to Wales and Northern Ireland by the UK Parliament. And that money has been, or the funds have been taken back to Whitehall. Now, we believe that is unfair. The temptation, of course, in the future will be to spend the money as quickly as possible to make sure that there is no surplus at the end of the year, and that doesn't ensure good value for money. So we would like to return to the situation that existed in years previous, where we are able to use the surplus that we build up through the course of the year and spend that money in the financial years subsequently.
Well, Mark, the JMC meeting is going to be very, very important, because it's the first opportunity in a year that we will have had to speak directly to David Cameron, apart from the very short phone call that we had with him just a short time ago in the aftermath of the elections. And there are important matters to be raised, and Peter has mentioned some of them. There's also the important matter of our ongoing grievance against the Treasury in relation to not fulfilling the previous agreement made by the Gordon Brown administration on our capital budget for important infrastructural matters right up to 2017. And I suggested recently to Owen Patterson, whenever Peter and I met him, that they should go and speak to Gordon Brown about the commitment that he made and the statement he made in the British House of Commons on the very day that Ian Paisley and I stood up for the first time in May 2007 as First and Deputy First Minister. So these are important matters, because they impact directly on our construction industry and on the prospects of us keeping thousands of people in work over the course of the coming period. The issue of corporation tax obviously is of critical importance, and we have been arguing for this for some considerable time, and with support now from, we believe, the political administration in Downing Street. Owen Patterson has been to the forefront of extolling the virtues of doing this because of our unique situation in regard to the island of Ireland and the low rate of corporation tax south of the border. Now, I think that from our perspective, it's very, very important that those elements who are there within the Treasury, who have been lukewarm about this from the very beginning, it's very, very important that the political leaders send a very, very clear message to them that this needs to be expedited in a very fair and balanced way. So, I mean, there's quite a number of things that we need to see resolved if we are to begin the climb out of the economic difficulties that we're faced with at this time.
Can I just say that, before I bring in Seb for a question, that I mean, Scotland, for example, and this is an aspect of our working together as administrations, I mean, we strongly support the Welsh Northern Irish claim for end-year flexibility, both because it's right. I mean, we have about £30 million at stake ourselves, but there is no question that the cause is right and just, and therefore should be supported. But we have support from the other administrations on issues such as the fossil fuel levy, where there's a very substantial Scottish interest, where there is no substantial interest in terms of Scotland, in terms of Wales and Northern Ireland. I mean, that's the atmosphere of mutual support, where the three administrations place together arguments to the Treasury and the United Kingdom government, which are founded on natural justice. Seb.
Stephen Crowell at The Guardian. Mr. Salmon, can I just ask you about Mr. Robinson's point about corporation tax? Do you agree, do you recognise the figure that you might lose £1 to £1.5 billion worth of Barnett receipts as a consequence of taking corporation tax powers?
But that's entirely dependent on the level of tax that you would set, Sev, and also whether you control the tax base or the ability just to vary the rate. What is important there, of course, is if you have the power to do so, then you have the right to choose what is in the best interest of your economy and people. If you don't have the power to do so, then you have no such ability or flexibility. The question in terms of timing, I think, is an important one. The reason that we've, and I in particular, but this administration in general, has strongly supported Northern Ireland's push on this issue is because we believe that would be beneficial to all our interests if Northern Ireland are successful. It will be beneficial in the sense of enabling a situation to take place where in the future we'll have the same flexibility. Obviously, you clearly use that flexibility in the interests of your populations.
Mr. Salmon, you seem to accept that Northern Ireland are in the lead on this. Long term, though, if Northern Ireland get control of corporation tax and cut it, how damaging potentially is that for the Scottish economy?
It's not just myself who accept that. I mean, if you remember the findings of the parliamentary committee chaired by Wendy Alexander in the last Parliament, they exactly couched their cross-party support in Scotland for flexibility in corporation tax in the context of developments in Northern Ireland. You know, it is a statement of fact by virtue of the arguments that have been placed forward over a long period of time by agreement in a majority administration and coalition in Northern Ireland on the argument of corporation tax, that they are at a position where a consultation paper is shortly coming to fruition. So that's just a statement of fact. The statement of politics is we have been supportive of Northern Ireland's ambitions in this direction because we think it will be beneficial if the same flexibility in the future might, as a result, become available to other administrations in these islands.
If it doesn't come, though, would it damage Scotland's economy if Northern Ireland did have that power?
Well, what I do is refer you to the statement of the cross-party group in the Parliament, in the last Parliament. I think it's a reasonable assumption, if that was a unanimous finding of the last Parliament in Scotland, it'll probably be a unanimous finding of this Parliament as well.
Sorry, can I just ask a reaction from both Mr. Robinson and Mr. McGuinness to a different story that's been running strongly, as you no doubt know, in the Belfast newspapers today. More WikiLeaks revelations claiming that there was contact between your two parties in late 2004 at a time when you said there was no contact. There were allegations from Irish government cables and something like 30 instances of quiet contact.
We've heard this story, I think, in 3 or 4 different contexts before. And I think it has been public knowledge that we had meetings with government and with government officials on a very regular basis following our success at the 2003 election. We knew, as did the public, that when the government was meeting us, that they were meeting Sinn Féin and attempting to move issues forward. There's never been any secret about that, and the party knew it, but there are no contacts of which I am aware, that come in the context of the direct contacts that were referred to in the Belfast Telegraph this morning. The contacts which the Southern government, the American government would have been aware of would have been through the British government, who, along with the Irish government, were acting in a facilitating fashion.
Wow.
First time Peter Robinson and I ever met face-to-face for a conversation was on the weekend of the 23rd and 24th of March 2007, when we sat down at Stormont Castle to effectively craft every single word, dot and comma, that Ian Paisley and Gerry Adams would say the following Monday, whenever both our parties clearly outlined that the following May would see us in government together. I think that's where people are at. People are at what is happening now. The fact that we've just come through an important election, that we've been returned with enhanced mandates from the electorate, and are now charged with the responsibility of moving forward to improve the quality of the lives of the people that we represent. I mean, I was the person who went in with Gerry Adams to Downing Street in 2003 after the Assembly elections and met a British Prime Minister who was almost at the point of despair whenever it was clear to me that he thought the best way to get the institutions back up again after they had collapsed was to restore the political fortunes of the Ulster Unionist Party. And I said to him, Tony, well, if you're going to base your strategy on that, we'll effectively go nowhere. And our challenge to bring about an inclusive government in the north, which has both the DUP and Sinn Féin and others in government together. And thankfully, from that moment on, Tony Blair recognised that the effort had to be made to ensure that we had an inclusive process, and it took a number of years. During that time, I'm sure Peter got very good at mind reading. I got very good at mind reading, and we also had the benefit of being able to speak to others that we were both speaking to and having some idea of where the process could go. Don't forget we all ended up at St Andrews, and we had a very important agreement at St Andrews, and we haven't looked back since. And I know WikiLeaks is fond of looking back. We're not looking back, we're looking forward to a better future and to the challenges that lie ahead in improving the quality of the lives of the people that we represent. And I think that we've been returned with such a resounding mandate in the course of the election clearly shows that the public are with us. So I think that's where our focus needs to be, not on stories that are being thrown up by elements who then, when they are thrown up, would choose to use them to try and undermine the way in which we ended up in government together in 2007. The important thing for the people who vote for us is that we are in government together. And the important thing for the people who vote for us is that we continue to be in government together and that we continue to develop a peace process that is absolutely in their interests.
I've no knowledge of the Belfast Telegraph WikiLeaks, and I have to say I had no involvement whatsoever. But what I can say from experience is that from other WikiLeaks revelations, that what appears in diplomatic cables is not necessarily what happened at meetings, and I can tell you that from absolute personal experience. That's certainly the case for the American embassies. I'm sure it's the case for other embassies as well.
Mr. Salmon, can I ask about something else in the news today briefly, if that's all right? Just wondering, as a keen football fan, what your thoughts are on the allegations surrounding FIFA, whether you think the SFA should perhaps not get abstain from the election tomorrow, and so the English FA has vowed to, whether indeed the election should go ahead tomorrow at all.
Well, I mean, I have to say I'm going to have a shimmy as far as that's concerned, a quick body swerve. I think I'll leave it to the good sense of Scotland's football authorities to decide their particular tactics as far as football is concerned. But the football will actually occupy the substantial part of the meetings we've just held, partly because Martin is still in mourning as a prominent Manchester United fan, but more so that Carwin is in celebration at the enormous success of Swansea and entering the Premiership. Do you want to say a word or two about that Welsh historic victory, sir?
My way, and I should have thanked you as well, Alec, for your hospitality.
You spent 20 minutes at the meeting talking about it.
Well, let's not get me into trouble here. I want to congratulate Swansea for making the Premier League an international league for the first time ever. And secondly, I have to say, of course, I'd like Cardiff to join them there next year, because I'm aware of the fact that I've got to keep both clubs happy.
Well, if mine was a shimmy, that was definitely a body swerve. That's absolutely fantastic.
First Minister Paul Gilbride, Scottish Daily Express. Given an issue, it's slightly off topic, that's dominated the Scottish body politic and the media this past few weeks, the issue of football and sectarianism. Is there any advice or anything that we could take from the Northern Ireland experience that could help us tackle this vile problem within our society?
Well, there are some aspects. I mean, I think I was discussing with Peter and Martin about the changing nature of support for Northern Ireland as an international side in terms of some of the initiatives that were made to broaden the base of support for the non-Irish team, and I think there may be some lessons there for us, not in terms of our international side, but in terms of our club sides. But we've always tried to share experience in the battle against sectarianism. I remember when Martin and Ian Paisley were across as First Minister and Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland a couple of years ago. Then we went to some of the anti-sectarianism workshops and the initiatives in the schools that take place already in Scotland. So, you know, both in terms of our meetings as administrations and in terms of our work through the British Irish Council, there are often threads of initiatives in each administration which learn or offer lessons for policy framework, and we're very, very aware of these and very, very willing, of course, to implement what is successful elsewhere and to give it a trial in Scotland. But you know, later on at the cabinet meeting this afternoon, we'll be putting the finishing touches to the legislation that we'll send to the Parliament for discussion and decision. Our objective is to have that legislation passed in time for the new football season in late July, and we don't believe, incidentally, that a legislative base is the whole answer to this particular problem. It's part of the answer. It's part of the framework of initiatives that are being made. And in terms of that framework, of course, we look at experience elsewhere to see what has worked elsewhere in order to bolster the drive against sectarian displays in our game of football. You know, the one thing I would say that I always try to describe this as sectarian displays as something which attach themselves to football like a parasite. You know, they're not intrinsic to our game of football. It's something that attaches itself to the game. And my absolute belief is that 99.9% both of wider Scottish society and of Scottish football fans want to see this finished, done with, ended, consigned to the dustbin of history where it belongs. And that's what we intend to do.
Mr. Robinson and Mr. McGuinness, have any thoughts from across the Irish about the situation here?
Well, the one thing that won't work is ignoring it. People need to be speaking out. They need to identify themselves very clearly with the fact that the worth of anybody on a pitch is nothing to do with their political or religious views. It's how skillful they are and the contribution that they make to the team. And it's the very antithesis of sport to bring outside issues onto the playing surface and to the spectator stands. I mean, I certainly support Alec and the comments that he's made. Only on Saturday, I was involved at a Football Fest event in Belfast, bringing together teams from both sections of our community, both sides of the border and from further afield. I was photographed with two players, one wearing a Rangers top and the other with a Celtic top. And I think the more people get to know each other, get to understand just how much they each share in terms of their love of the game, I think we'd see a lot less of the anger and vitriol on the stands and terraces.
Well, I think the point that Peter has made is the valid one. It is not an issue that can be ignored. We're involved in our own battle against sectarianism. We come from a place where some people think it's smart to burn down GAA clubs and others think it's smart to burn down Orange Halls. Well, our administration is totally and absolutely opposed to the sorts of people who would try to engage in those types of activities. And we are absolutely pledged to work together to defeat sectarianism and indeed racism within our society. But sectarianism is a curse, it's a scourge, and there is a responsibility on all of us, particularly those of us who find ourselves in hugely important positions of responsibility, to lead from the front and to show that we are not sectarian and that we will, under no circumstances, allow anybody to contemplate the prospect that there are people in government who think that sectarianism is a good idea. I went to the opening of the First Derry Presbyterian Church just a few weeks ago. It's a church which has been refurbished, and it's and one of the most iconic parts of the city of Derry on Derry's walls. And the work done by the Reverend David Latimer, in consort with Father Michael Canny at St Eugene's Cathedral, brought all of the citizens of that city to the church for what was a fantastic opening after a massive refurbishment, which we contributed to through funds from the government that we're part of. And what was really heartening about that was that the entire west bank of the Foyle, which is mainly nationalist and Republican, were fully represented at that opening. Peter has just explained the sort of things that he's involved in, and we're involved in these projects and processes on an ongoing basis. That's what given leadership is all about. And I mean, we who had the good fortune to be able to watch the Barcelona-Manchester United match, even though Manchester United were beat, I don't think anybody that is a pure out-and-out sports fan was looking at the Barcelona team, who were playing football from a planet maybe that we've never seen before. We weren't saying who's the Catholic or who's the Protestant, who's the Methodist or who's the Anglican. We were looking at people who were very skillful at their game and who providing great fun and enjoyment for many, many people. Last thing I want to say is this, is I have a young friend, you might believe this or believe it not, but it's absolutely true, who lives in the Craigan estate in Derry City, who's a Rangers fan. And sometimes he goes to the local pub and he wears his Rangers jersey and nobody blinks an eyelid. I know you might find that hard to believe, but it is absolutely true. So I think what we need to do is not be offended.
Any of the rest of you to try and
Not be offended at the sight of a Rangers jersey or be offended at the sight of a Celtic jersey. The true worth of all of us is our ability to appreciate that people support different teams. People have different religions, they have different thought processes, and it's whether or not we see difference as a quality that enhances our lives, or whether or not we believe that we should be all the same. Now, I don't believe we should be all the same. I believe that what we need to do is appreciate that people believe in different things, they support different things, but let people do that without there being violence involved or threats or intimidation of any description whatsoever. That's where we need to get to, but the key point is leadership. It's the point that Alec made, it's the point that Peter made, and it's the point that I'm making, and I'm sure Kerwin will support all three of us when we say that there is no future for anybody in sectarianism.
I'm not sure how many Episcopalians there are in the Barcelona team, but I would suggest if there are, then that'll be a substantial boost for that faith group in Scottish society. Now, is there one last question before these people have to depart? In which case, thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.